Right, okay, so we're going to have a look at adding the index of multiple deprivation scores to a map. This is the landing page for ArcGIS. There's information on this. If you scroll down, you'll find there's a range of acronyms and abbreviations which are here and what they are. We notice that, slightly unhelpfully, they're not in alphabetical order. I suspect they're in order of domains as they were in the original documentation. But as mentioned before, the ones we're interested in are index of multiple deprivation scores and ranks. Now this information is from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government Resources, which they have a few others, and I suspect other government departments have as well, which I will investigate a bit later on. So if we open up the gallery, we can see it's got IMDs, it's got counties, housing need, housing income, and a range of other things which are mapped in a similar way as we're going to see here. Right, get rid of that. Over here are some tools most of which we won't use. The share is irrelevant because we can't obviously share something which belongs to ArcGIS directly, but you'll be able to share your own information. You'll see that a bit later on. ArcGIS Desktop is a paid-for version which we're not using. Scene Viewer is a three-dimensional view which we'll have a look at in some separate videos for later. But for now we want to open up in Map Viewer. We click on that and we get a map of all of the low super output areas, and as we'll see they are carrying information on index of multiple deprivation scores. Unfortunately can't see it yet, but we'll see how to do that in a second. So I'm going to zoom in to Middlesbrough. A little chunt to itself. Oh, gone a bit too far. Go back in a sec. Way too far. Obviously it takes a little bit of a while. It's much faster than it used to be. It used to be quite slow. It's now pretty quick. Okay, so there's Middlesbrough. Now each of these boundaries is a low super output area. Now as mentioned before, these are based broadly speaking on population. So if you click on that, we'll get some information on it, including things like index of multiple deprivation ranks and deciles and various other things. And down the bottom somewhere we've got total population, with this case about 2060. If you look at one of the in-town ones and scroll down, we'll see its total population, again 1600, so that's pretty close. Order of magnitude type closeness. Right, now this is sort of useful, but it'd be nice if it was colour coded by index of multiple deprivation scores or something similar, and that's quite easy to do. There's a bunch of options over here, some of which we'll look at in later videos. The show table, which isn't fantastically useful because it's a table of indices of multiple deprivation for the whole country. I'll probably have a look at filter a little bit later on, but for now what we're going to look at is change style. Right, it's going to take me a while to find this because it's a non-alphabetical list. At the moment it's just showing the location. So I want to go down till we find index of multiple deprivation score, which, as I say, and there it is, index of multiple deprivation score. Right, now it's going to ask us some questions. It's going to change colour in a second. Yeah, it's changed colour now. Okay, zoom in a little bit. And it's got a little key here. So broadly speaking, the darker areas, the higher the IMD score is, therefore the more depressed, more deprived the areas. The lighter it is, the less deprived the area it is. And we'll talk in a little bit more detail about how we can make this clearer and use this as a tool. You may say, well, I'm not too keen on this colour, and then in that case we go to options. Right, so one thing we could do is we could drag this slider up to change the colour as we've got it now, which can be quite useful, but I'm going to take it back to about 37, which is the default setting. We can change the transparency, which sometimes can be useful, and we'll explore this a bit later on when we add the scores and the doors data. So I'll leave it back to where it was a bit later on. But one thing that's probably most useful is going to symbols and changing the colours in a number of different ways. Right, so yeah, so I'm not going to do that yet. Right, sorry, I just don't remember what to do there. What we're going to do is classify data. Now this is going to allow us to put it in a logical framework. Natural breaks, which seems reasonable. There are other things in explore, equal intervals and standard deviations and things. But for this, I think what we're going to do is just go straight to 10 classes. And then we're going to select an option in a moment of having each class containing 10 percentage points in this case, or 10 IMD scores in this case. So it'll have a little chunk to do itself. Didn't seem to work the first time. Right, so that's much more logical, isn't it? Okay, we got 60 to 100, which is quite a big one. We may need to think of ways in which we can do that and change that a bit later on. But for now, it's not bad. We've got it in tens, which I think is a good start. Yeah, it's not really worked out well, to be honest. Right, okay, I went away for a moment there. I did a little bit of playing. Say manual breaks with 10 classes, and I've set an option of 10 of round classes 10, which is giving it as a nice breakdown. So 90 to 100 down to 0 to 10. So that's exactly what we're looking for. If we go to symbols now, we'll see it's been broken down into various coloured bands, which is quite useful. They're not as sort of varied as I would like, but they're not bad. So what we can do is we can click on this one, which goes from red to green, which I think is a good variety of colours. Click on that. It says OK. It'll show it itself. And there we got a nice map. Right, now I'm inclined to say we possibly want to change the flip. At the moment we've got the green for the most deprived areas and red for the less deprived areas, which I think is a bit counterintuitive. So if we go back to symbols and we click on that arrow, it will invert the colour ramp. That looks a little bit better. Right, so we can zoom in again. Right, that's not bad. We've got a pretty good map there, clearly differentiating the various indices and multiple deprivation scores for various areas. So we're going to click on OK, and then click on Done. And we've got it on the basis of a nice map there. Now we can do a range of other things with this. For a start, we can change what the base map is. On the base map here, there's a number of different ones we can look at. At the moment, I think we're using streets, but you can have maps based on satellite images, for example. May or may not be useful. We'll have a look at some of them, and you can decide what you think. You probably need to zoom in to see this a little bit more. It's a little bit difficult to see, so if you go back to this, and we play about with the transparency, wherever that's gone to. Must be in here. Yeah, so transparency. So we can make it a little bit more transparent, which would allow you to go into a sort of street level, which may be useful for presentation type areas if you're looking at two different areas, for example. Other base maps, which might be useful. Navigation's pretty good, I think. It clearly gives us the main roads, basically. So if we zoom out, we have one of the classic ways of talking about indexes and multiple deprivation scores in Middlesbrough. I'll click on OK and done that, which is as you go from Martin and Nunthorpe, we have some of the least deprived areas in the country. You go down Martin Road to central Middlesbrough and you have some of the most deprived areas in the country. Right, okay, so that's the first map. That's basically how to use this. So another thing I should mention is print. You print the map. You can print the map with Legend. So we click on Print Map. It brings up in a moment. Yeah. So it brings up a map which you can use in papers and presentations and whatnot. Of course, you can also potentially use this dynamically in a presentation. That's a static map, but of course, here we have a dynamic map. You can zoom in. You can move stuff around. Right, okay, I think I'll do for now. I'll come back a little bit later on and do another video on adding the scores and the doors information.